Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October 17th, 2024 meeting of the Salisbury Wicomico County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your attendance today. We have a number of items on our agenda, so we'll try to go through those as expeditiously as we can, being respectful of your time, but please be patient with us as we move through the important work of our city and county. The first item, and I do want to note that Ms. Sharon DeShiel is here. She's a elected member of our city council, so we welcome her. Thank you for being here. I don't think we have any other elected officials. Okay, very good. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, September 19, 2024. The minutes have been provided to you. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look them over. Are there any revisions or omissions? Any changes anyone like to bring to our attention? No. Okay, if not, can we have a motion then to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments? If not, if you'll support the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Chair votes aye, and the minutes are approved. All right. The next item on our agenda is sign plan approval. Starbucks. Do we have anyone representing Starbucks that would like to step forward today?
I don't think they're here today.
Okay.
The
All right.
lady who works for Gable Signs, who is planning on being here, she's originally from Great Britain, and she's home with her mother who's sick. So she couldn't quite make it today.
Good. Okay, thank you for that. So we'll
Welcome.
turn to you, Mr. Urey, for the staff report.
Okay, as you mentioned, this is a sign plan for Starbucks, which is located at Tillman Road in the shopping center. It was formerly known as the Kmart Shopping Center, but is actually officially called the Gateway Crossing Shopping Center. And the request, Gable Signs, as I mentioned, on behalf of Starbucks, has submitted a sign plan for the coffee shop, which is currently under construction on Lot 5 of the Gateway Crossing Shopping Center. Lot 5 is the one that's right next to Kentucky Fried Chicken. The sign plan has the approval of the property owner, Oak Ridge Baptist Church, and you can see this in attachments 1 and 2. As part of a comprehensive development plan for this shopping center, a sign plan must be approved for the tenants of the shopping center, including all out parcels such as this one. There is, as you would guess, some history with this shopping center, beginning back in 1974 when the Planning Commission granted approval for the original shopping center. At that time, the property is outside of the city's corporate limits, but was subsequently annexed into the city in 1976, which is also when the original building was constructed. Numerous changes to the comprehensive development plan have been approved since then. Most significant approval happened in 2002 when the Planning Commission approved a new preliminary and final comprehensive development plan for redevelopment of the entire shopping center. This approval streamlined the approval process so that applicants would no longer also have to go to our Board of Appeals to alter a non-conforming use. Because it existed in the county prior to being annexed into the city, and also prior to the adoption of our current zoning code, it was considered a non-conforming use. So doing that change in 2002 helped speed things up. Several approvals have been granted by the Planning Commission since that time, most recently with a comprehensive development plan approval for this same Starbucks in December of last year. The sign plan itself, the proposed sign plan shows a modest display of building signage, a 13.17 square foot Starbucks sign with individual channel letters is proposed for the south elevation, while the east and west walls both have a just under 20 square foot logo, which is also accompanied by just under a 5 square foot drive-through sign. And that also consists of individual channel letters. 2.5 square foot illuminated Starbucks projecting blade signs are also proposed at the southwest and southeast corners of the building. Other signs include 2 drive-through directional signs located on the east side of the property, an exit only and thank you sign, which will be at the southwest corner of the building, an instructional sign reading clearance 8 foot 6 inches is mounted on the bar at the drive-through entrance, while 2 menu boards are also proposed at the north end of the building. Finally, a 6-foot-tall, 9-square-foot drive-through welcome monument sign is proposed for it says south here, but it should say for the north side of the property along Route 50. There was a little bit of confusion. I had two different site plans, and they read backwards. For comparison purposes, the KFC monument sign on the adjoining property is 28 square feet in area. And all the signs are proposed to utilize the typical Starbucks brand colors. And you can see all these different signs in attachments 3 through 16. Our comments, the zoning code has no specific standards regarding the size of wall signs within the shopping center, as the signs are to be approved by the Planning Commission's discretion. However, the commission has typically followed the following formula for such signs: 2 square feet of signage for every linear foot of tenant space per storefront width. For example, a 20-foot wide tenant space would be allowed a sign up to 40 square feet in area. The building signs are all well under this formula, so they're fine, we feel. The zoning code also indicates that only one wall sign shall be permitted per tenant in a shopping center. However, the Planning Commission has frequently waived this standard for out-parcel tenants such as this one. There are no objections to any of the signs proposed, and having said that, we would like to recommend approval of the Starbucks sign plan as submitted.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there comments or questions from either of the commission members in regard to the signage? Yes, sir.
I've got a modest question, I guess. I'm surprised, if I understand correctly, that the signage they're proposing is pretty minimal, it seems like to me, and they're not talking about a separate pole sign, lit pole sign.
No. No, they were advised ahead of time that that wouldn't happen.
Okay.
Because there is a pylon sign that has been approved 20 years ago for the entire shopping center that was never installed. So,
Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, we'll be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the Starbucks sign plan as submitted.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, if you'll support the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Chair votes aye. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Next item is a revised sign plan approval for Red Oak Car Wash. All right, do we have anyone? Yes, sir. Okay. And would you be good enough just to state your name and your business for the record?
Gary Spence with Phillips Signs.
Good, very good. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Pence. All right, Mr. Fury.
sure. As you mentioned, this is a sign plan request as well for the Red Oak Car Wash, which is located at 1100 Nanacoke Road. A revised sign plan has been submitted by Phillips Signs to modify the existing pylon sign with the installation of an electronic message center in place of the existing reader board. The property owner supports the proposed change, and you can see all this in attachments 1 through 3. As part of a comprehensive development plan for this property, revisions to the existing approved sign plan require Planning Commission review and approval prior to the installation of new signs that vary from the approved plan. There is a small history with this property as well. The Planning Commission approved the final comprehensive development plan for the car wash and laundry in December of 2001, and a sign plan for the laundry was approved in August of 2002. The sign plan itself, the proposed revised sign plan for the existing pylon sign will incorporate a new electronic message center that will replace the existing reader board. The dimensions will remain the same at 5 feet by 10 feet, or 50 square feet. You can see this in attachment number 4. Our concerns, we have none. The proposed changes are relatively minor in nature, and the sign's overall size will not change. The message center will allow the business to provide multiple advertisements and notices without the need for banners or other signage on the property. And so we would like to recommend approval for the revised sign plan as submitted.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Spence, we're happy to hear from you.
Well, as you know, he had a fire some year ago. He just thought he may be able to generate some more revenue with this digital sign versus the one which you have to change the letters all the time.
Thank you. All right, comments or questions from either of the commission members? Just
clarification, the pictures we have is just one side, but I assume it's a two-sided sign. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I got a small comment. I mean, I will vote for this, and I don't have any concern with what's proposed, other than an electronic sign in this spot is a bad idea, I think, from a traffic situation. It's very busy now on both roads, and it's in the V, but I that's just a personal concern. That's wherever they are.
I understand your point.
Yeah.
They are permitted here. Now, the commission, and I should have probably put this in as a condition of approval. The commission has approved these types of signs before, and also our Board of Appeals, with the condition that the message can't change any more than, at the most frequent, every 6 seconds, which will help reduce flashing and things like that. So that, if you want to incorporate that as a condition, that would be fine.
You want to give us some language, maybe, Mr. Uri, about that?
The sign's message shall change no more frequent than every 6 seconds. Will that work for you?
Yeah, that's not a bad comment, I think, and I feel like probably
That's more than fair, because Sussex County has that limit, and theirs is 5. So 6 is not, that's right in there.
Exactly. It's probably a good thing, as Mr. Thomas says, indicates probably safety for safety reasons, and you're absolutely right. You get focused on what's being shown on the sign, and you're not always paying. You miss the green light when the light changes or whatever, so it's probably an appropriate condition. Are there any other comments from anyone? Okay, if not, let's entertain a motion.
Okay. Move the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the revised sign plan as amended at this meeting.
As submitted, but have the message to change no more frequently than every 6 seconds.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, if not, if you'll support the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, the chair votes aye, the motion's carried. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Spence.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is a revised preliminary comprehensive development plan. Approval on East Naylor Mill parcel 239. Good afternoon. I think we know two out of three. In fact, we probably know 3 out of 3, but it'd be helpful for you, if you will, please, to state your name and place of business.
Yeah, hi, Andrew Roud with St. John Properties, Baltimore, Maryland.
Good. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. Be here.
All right, Ms. Jackson.
So we're coming before you with case number 23031, East Naylor Mill, parcel 239. The applicant is Parker and Associates for St. John Properties. It's a revised preliminary comprehensive development plan. The location of the property is on Naylor Mill Road and Parsons Lake Drive in the general commercial district. It's a 17.76 acre property. The proposal is to revise the preliminary comprehensive development plan to change the development from 2 flex R&D buildings and 3 retail buildings to 3 flex R&D buildings and 1 drive-through retail building. For the purpose of defining this use and compliance with the zoning code, staff has determined this is a business center in the general commercial district. This is consistent with the use designated previously. A preliminary comprehensive development plan was approved in December 21st, 2023, and I've included the conditions of that approval in the staff report. I also have a copy of the original plan. Should you decide you need it, I'm happy to pass it out. The staff notes the following with regard to zoning code requirements. The first being access. The original proposed access point is on Naylor Mill Road only. This revised preliminary comprehensive development plan adds 3 access points on Parsons Lake Drive. Sorry. Okay. And 2 of the 3 entrances are intended for access to the loading areas of the flex buildings. Parsons Lake Drive provides access to a large residential development and is planned to eventually connect to Brown Road. Additionally, the intersection of Parsons Lake Drive and East Naylor Mill Road is planned to have a traffic circle, which may impact parking, stormwater management, and entrance locations. For these reasons, staff have concerns regarding the number of access points and the potential for truck traffic on Parsons Lake Drive to exceed the limits of its design and negatively affect the residential development accessed from Parsons Lake Drive. The developer shall work with the city after obtaining a traffic impact study to address concerns related to access and site circulation, which may include closing 1 or more points of access and limiting truck traffic on Parsons Lake Drive. 2, parking. A total of 452 spaces are provided, including 16 ADA van accessible spaces. This exceeds the 434 car parking spaces required at the rate of 1 parking space per 350 square feet. However, the Planning Commission can approve an increase of up to 20% of the parking requirement for a maximum of 520 parking spaces. The proposed increase is 18 additional spaces, or a 4% increase, so they're within that 20% limit. Staff does not object to the additional parking, provided that the parking adjacent to loading areas be designated as employee parking only, and all landscape requirements for parking lots have been met, including the requirement that 10% of the interior of the parking lot be landscaped, primarily with trees capable of producing shade at maturity, per Section 17-22020, and also noted in Section D of the staff report. A loading and unloading place is required for a building labeled retail, per Code Section 17-196-40A3, which states 1 off-street loading and unloading space shall be provided for groups of uses where the total gross square feet of the building is 30,000 square feet or less. Bicycle parking is based on the number of employees, which is currently unknown. That rate is 1 space plus 1 space per 50 employees. Bicycle racks are provided at a total of 20 bicycle parking spaces. Bicycle racks are providing a total of 20 bicycle parking spaces, which will allow the site to be in compliant up to 1,000 employees. Since the number of employees is unknown at this stage, it's recommended that the need for bike racks be reevaluated and added as needed by the owner. Trash collection will be private. The building and setback spacing requirements, they are listed in the staff report. I can read them if you would like, but they are compliant under the current design. Building elevations and floor plans. The proposed elevations are included on sheets A5 to A7 of attachment 2. Building plans are approved by the Department of Infrastructure and Development for compliance prior to the issuance of building permits. For the sign plan, preliminary signage is provided as a part of attachment 2 on sheet A2. 3 ground signs are proposed. 1 proposed on Naylor Mill is 25 feet in height with approximately 200 square foot area on each side of the sign. The second is 13 feet in height with approximately 130 feet of area on each side of the sign. A third is a 5-foot sign proposed on the north end of the Flex Building B with a 22.5 square foot area on each side of the sign. The proposed signage exceeds what is allowed under Section 17-172-20, which I have included for your reference. Additionally, 1 wall sign is permitted for each business establishment, which shall not exceed an area of 20 square feet in area, and the Size, location, and color of wall signs shall be approved by the Planning Commission as part of the overall sign plan. So proposed signage should be amended to comply prior to the final comprehensive development plan. For landscaping, the landscaping details are provided on sheet 3 of attachment 2. A final landscape plan must be included with the final comprehensive development plan and be compliant with the standards set forth in the code. These standards include screening along lot lines, a 5-foot wide screening area where a parking lot adjoins residential property along all lot lines abutting the residential lot, and around the loading and waste disposal areas. The landscaping plan must show lot landscaping and screening in compliance with the code, including the requirement that at least 10% of the interior parking lot be landscaped, and the primary landscaping material must be trees capable of providing shade at maturity. Calculations shall be shown on the landscape plan demonstrating compliance with the 10% interior planting requirement. The final comprehensive development plan submittal shall show a landscaped buffer between the loading area and the residential development to include mature plantings at a density that will mitigate for noise and provide a visual buffer between the uses. Street trees along Parsons Lake Drive should be shown on the plan and retained as part of the development. A development schedule, community impact statement, and statement of intent to proceed, and financial capability is required to be submitted before final comprehensive development plan approval. This is a project that came in before the last meeting's decision, so that is why it's not here today. But starting next month, I believe they will be here. Fire service. The Salisbury Fire Department had no comment on the current proposal. However, any changes will be subject to further review and may result in comments. Stormwater management. A stormwater management concept has not been submitted for review. Staff anticipates the submittal for review after preliminary comprehensive development plan approval. The applicant should provide proof of compliance with the County Forest Conservation Program prior to the final comprehensive development plan. And then additionally, a traffic impact study will be required as part of the civil engineering review, and comments must be addressed prior to approval of the final comprehensive development plan. If the impact study warrants, the now residential street Parsons Lake Drive must be extended as a major collector road. So staff's recommendation is approval of the revised preliminary comprehensive development with the following conditions to be satisfied prior to the approval of the final comprehensive development plan. Excuse me. The site shall be developed in accordance with a final comprehensive development plan approval that meets all code requirements. Minor plan adjustments may be approved by the Salisbury Department of Infrastructure and Development. 2, submit a traffic impact study. 3, work with city staff to resolve site circulation and vehicular access to the site. 4, identify car parking spaces at the rear of buildings adjacent to loading areas as employee parking only. 5, add a loading space for the identified retail building. 6, submit a landscape plan compliant with Section 17-2020 of the zoning code with the final comprehensive development plan. 7, show a landscape buffer between the loading area and residential development. 8, provide calculations on the plans demonstrating that 10% of the interior parking lot is landscaped. 9, show the street trees along Parsons Lake Drive and retain them as part of the development proposal. 10, submit a compliant sign plan for the Planning Commission approval as part of the final comprehensive development plan approval. 11, provide a development schedule, community impact statement, and statement of intent to proceed and financial capability. And then 12, this approval is subject to further review and approval by the Salisbury Department of Infrastructure and Development, the Salisbury Fire Department, and other agencies as appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, gentlemen, I'll let you decide who goes first. Maybe it's Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Betsy. As you know, Mr. Andrew Root here with St. John's has proposed a couple of these very similar projects. We're calling them the flex or the business space or the business center style developments. As we came in, we presented a couple of these kind of in rapid fire succession, all pretty much quite a few spots in the city. The one that we proposed first at Westwood, we recently had a groundbreaking yesterday. It is going to start construction very soon. We're really excited to bring that to market. As the excitement on that project has grown, we've kind of firmed up our market studies and figured out what the needs of the city is going to be. We've looked at the sites that we subsequently had approved, i.e. the site south of this one on Naylor, this one as well, and we've looked at the different mixes of retail versus the flex space, and we determined the need on this one on the north that we had just a little bit too much retail on the first submission to you, so we thought it'd probably be prudent to come back and get this revised mix of square footage approved by you before we really start the engineering. The Westwood project, as I say, it's starting construction in the next couple of days, 2 weeks. The south site that we looked at most recently after that one, those construction drawings are probably going to be submitted next week, and I think we're looking forward to getting a shovel in the ground as quick as we can. Here, if you guys see fit to approve this revised mix, we're going to start right on that one. So, so these are, you know, they're getting a lot of interest in the city, and we feel like it's going to be a very successful product. As far as the comments go, or the staff report goes, we don't see any problem with any of the comments that Betsy's brought forth or any of the comments that were on the original preliminary approval. As far as the traffic circle goes, we've, you know, when Betsy and her staff have put together the staff report, they gave us the opportunity to kind of discuss these comments before we went into formal staff report. And we've kind of worked through, you know, a bunch of them, or at least agreed to agree as we move forward, you know, regarding the circulation and the access points to Parsons Lake Drive. If there's issues there, we can work around it, we can restrict them, we can eliminate them. But really what's going to tell the tale is that traffic impact analysis, which we have agreed to do. We've agreed to do the full community impact statement. It's just this one was a little bit of a historical one. They've graced us with the ability to get that thing done and submit it before final. So we will have that complete and submitted but prior to coming back to final. That includes a traffic study that will look at the traffic circle, our access points, and our interior circulation with the site itself. As far as the signage and the landscaping goes, yeah, those will be fully compliant with code. The interior, 10%, I know we have those. The buffer along Parsons Lake Drive at the rear, there's a bunch of easements back there that once I get through the preliminary, I'll start the design. I'm thinking I can get rid of most of those easements and we can either retain mature existing woods back there or supplement with landscaping or do something to really buffer those townhouses from this development. And then as far as the street trees go on Parsons Lake Drive, we will plan on saving those as well. But all things said, we don't see any problem with any of the conditions in the staff report and accept them wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rood, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make? Or?
No more than what Brock said, really. We just got a little spooked with how much retail is there, especially strip retail. So we kind of stick to our knitting and go back to the flex. We know that very well.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Are there questions or comments from the commission members?
Just a couple for
Yes.
clarification. The traffic circle, would that be built concurrently with this project, or is it a separate project? How do those two interface?
The traffic circle is somewhat of an enigma at this point.
Okay.
And it's being discussed, preliminarily designed. Its inception was generated through Parsons Lake singles. Where that is in the process, I don't quite know. When the circle gets built, I don't quite know. I think it's going to be a trip generation determination or city staff determination of when it needs to be built. I have brought that circle into our drawings, and it doesn't really impact our drawings at all. It just clips the corners and gets room. It's more impact to the Parsons Lake entrance per se.
So it's not an impediment to your progress?
No, sir.
Okay.
We can make it work if the city says put it in now. Obviously, we'd rather not, but you know, it just depends on what the studies dictate, and we're willing to work with the city in any way we can.
Okay. My only other comment is I fully get all the comments about the concern with Parsons Lake and making sure the road section can meet truck traffic and those things. I also, you know, quite honestly, I like this design from a safety standpoint. It is very distinct. The trucks go one place and cars go another place, and there the two shall meet, and that's a great. So to the extent that we can make a design that works well for Parsons Lake Drive, but still kind of keeps some of these essential functions, I think would be a win-win. So.
Comments?
I had some of the same comment regarding traffic circle. And I guess you have seen a preliminary then, and
Yes, sir.
know how it's going to impact it, because anymore, a traffic circle is not exactly similar to another traffic circle.
Becoming grander and grander,
They are.
yes, sir.
They are,
They-
especially the splitting of the lanes and.
Yeah, the engineers for the singles project did a conceptual design. I got that conceptual design, traced it and overlaid it and brought it into our stuff, and it just is reworking a little bit of asphalt. I can.
So it wouldn't materially affect your development?
Yeah, so I think even if we didn't have to build it at this point, I think that the staff would still require the dedication of the land to build it at some point in the future, and we've got the ability to do that without really detrimenting the project.
Just wanted to say, I guess on behalf of St. John's, I'm glad you see this as a good market. I think it'll make Salisbury even more of a center of activity on definitely the lower shore, and I think flex space is a great idea.
Thank you.
All right, other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, we're ready to entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission approve the preliminary comprehensive development plan with the 12 conditions noted within our packet.
Okay, is there a second to them? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say just for the St. John's flex space development.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion then to approve preliminary comprehensive development plan with the 12 conditions stated in the staff report. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, hearing none. If you'll support the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, the chair votes aye, and the motion is carried. Okay, very good, and
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. You see the name? Good to see you.
Right, the next item is final comprehensive development plan approval for Martin's Mill. All right. And Mr. Parker, you're also here on
Yes, sir.
behalf of the applicant for this. Okay, good afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez. We'll turn to you for the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so this is for Martin's Mill. This is for a final comprehensive development plan, a wellhead protection plan, and a final subdivision plat approval. Parker and Associates, on behalf of the owner, has submitted a request to construct a new residential development consisting of a mixture of single-family homes, townhomes, and apartments. The applicants propose to construct 67 single-family dwellings with garages and driveways, 58 townhouse units with driveways, and 4 three-story 24-unit apartment buildings for a community total of 221 residential units. The total acreage of the parcel being developed is 34.67 acres, including public streets, and is located on the south side of Dagsboro Road. A narrative has been provided in Attachment 1, along with a final comprehensive development plan, Attachment 2, and a final subdivision plat in Attachment 3. The Planning Commission approved a preliminary comprehensive development plan in May 2007. This approval consisted of 157 townhouse units at that time, but a revised preliminary comprehensive development plan was submitted to Planning Commission in August 2023 with the 221 units proposed today, and received approval pending the granting of a special exception for the additional density. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved a special exception for density increase to 221 units at the November 2023 meeting after reviewing a community impact statement provided by the applicant. As for the comprehensive development plan review, the zoning code requires plan approvals. Staff notes the following. Parking and streets. The zoning code requires parking to be provided at 2 spaces per dwelling unit for both single-family dwellings and townhomes, and all are compliant with code standards. Parking for apartment buildings is calculated at a rate of 1.5 spaces per unit for a required total of 144 spaces. However, 173 spaces are provided on the plan, which is a 20% increase. The Planning Commission granted a parking waiver in August 2023 to allow for the additional parking with the condition of providing additional landscaping. The additional landscaping is reflected in this submittal. A dumpster enclosure is provided for the apartments at the east end of the parking lot and is screened in accordance with code requirements. The narrative states trash collection will be public. City of Salisbury Field Operations does not collect refuse from dumpsters, so at minimum, the multifamily units will need to be served by private trash collection. As shown, all dwellings and buildings meet or exceed building setback and spacing requirements. The plan shows 67 single-family lots that are at least 10,000 square feet on 15.38 acres. The 58 townhouse lots are on 9.67 acres at 6 units per acre, and this complies with the code. The R10A residential district permits apartments at 8 units per acre. This plan indicates that the applicant's proposed development of the apartment portion of the site at 16.38 units per acre. This increase is allowable based on the special exception that was granted in November 2023. The plan shows stormwater management practices throughout the project, as well as other common areas that are accessible for open space. The total percentage of open area is approximately 60% of the site, which exceeds the minimum standards. Public streets with sidewalks, street trees, and lighting per city standards are proposed throughout the project. Sample building elevations and floor plans have been provided to you in attachment 2. A rendering of the proposed apartment building has also been provided. No details regarding signage for the project have been provided. Any proposed signage will need Planning Commission approval prior to the issuance of sign permits. A landscaping plan showing street trees as well as foundation plantings has been submitted. The plan includes a mix of deciduous shade trees, evergreens, deciduous flowering trees, and ornamental shrubs. Construction is expected to begin once all approvals have been granted. A specific development schedule was not indicated, but the community impact statement provided by the applicant anticipates completion by 2028. A community impact statement was provided in October 2023 in attachment 4. The supplied statement addresses all requirements set forth in Chapter 17, including financial, environmental, and socioeconomic impacts, as well as impacts on existing infrastructure, schools, emergency services, and the area housing market. The statement of intent to proceed and financial capability was not provided. This project has been reviewed by the City of Salisbury Fire Marshal's Office for compliance, and there are no further comments at this time. The stormwater management plan has been reviewed by the Salisbury Department of Infrastructure and Development. BMPs across the site provide adequate storage and filtering of runoff. This site is located within the Wellhead Protection District. The proposed residential uses are permitted within the district and would not generate the exceptions shown in Chapter 17.100.030 of the Salisbury Zoning Code. Staff finds that the proposed development meets the requirements. Forest Conservation Program requirements will be met prior to the issuance of building permits. A traffic impact study has been provided by the applicant. While the study does not anticipate unacceptable levels of service on Dagsboro Road, the city is expecting additional development in this area that may compound to create undue congestion. Staff has provided transportation comments to the applicant and has been in discussion with the developer regarding a fee in lieu for additional improvements at the entrance on North Point Drive. The Wicomico County Board of Ed has been notified of the proposed development. The developer has provided the proposed number of students to the board for planning purposes within the community impact statement. As for planning comments, while the density increases via special exception in the CBD have been involved in litigation, the city's legal team has determined that the special exception for this project is still valid at this time. Martins Mill is located in the R10A zoning district, and the determination to increase the density by the City Board of Zoning Appeals was not challenged in the appeal period. The Planning Commission may proceed with the approval of the final CDP while the special exception is still valid, if you guys are so inclined to do so. Staff recommends approval of the final comprehensive development plan and wellhead protection plan and subdivision plat for Martins Mill with the following conditions. The site shall be developed in accordance with a final comprehensive development plan approval that meets all code requirements. Minor plan adjustments may be approved by the Salisbury Department of Infrastructure and Development. Provide a detailed signage plan for approval by the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of sign permits. Provide for private trash collection throughout the development. Amend the final subdivision plat notes to include right to farm legislation. Collaborate with the Department of Infrastructure and Development to determine appropriate relief to the potential congestion on North Point Drive. Provide a statement of intent to proceed and financial capability prior to final plan signatures. provide a detailed development schedule to city staff prior to the issuance of building permits. And then finally, this approval is subject to further review and approval by the Salisbury Department of Infrastructure and Development and the Salisbury Fire Department.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Amanda. Martin's Mill is one of my older legacy projects, I lovingly call them. I think we started that back in the early 2000s with Faith Baptist Church as an annexation, as a means to bring sewer and water to Faith Baptist Church so they could expand their school and provide a full K through 12 school. Died on the vine like many other projects did at that point in time. Now the things have kind of come full circle and we've come back before you with somewhat of a different plan. This one is a true mix of all different types of residential units. Townhouses or single families up near Dagsboro where it transitions into the county next to Avalon Park, transitioning back to the townhouses when we get closer to the city, and then closer to North Point Drive will be the apartments. The plans that we're submitting now, they don't propose a formal connection to North Point Drive just because that's the Brown Farm is the missing link there. The piece behind Target, it was recently approved. It's going to be building North Point Drive to the edge of the city. We just need that big Brown Farm to come in to be able to make this viable link. So we're making the provisions as though it is going to connect. The staff report mentions dealing with the city with a payment in lieu for that connection. We facilitated that connection in our design, but that connection is hopefully coming in the near future. But as far as the project itself, we just received the glorious email from Jessica over at DID today that said there's no more engineering comments. So we are ready to go. The developers are anxious to get started, and we don't have any problems with any of the comments or the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. Other questions from the commission members? Yes, sir.
Avalon Park. There's no connection going through Avalon Park from this development, correct?
No, sir.
Okay,
None.
all right.
Just a engineering question. With, failing water or, septic systems throughout the county, the ability to connect eventually the sewer to properties like Avalon Park, if that can be a consideration in the design, I think that makes a lot
We
of sense.
do have the mains built and extended all the way to Dagsboro Road. So they are coming through.
Thank you.
And they are oversized to the point where they get and turn up into our project. So they are oversized and as deep as possible to get to the Brown Farm, to get to Zion Road. So we've made the provisions to extend it to the east, and we are extending it to the city limits on the north.
Questions? Okay, if not, we're ready then to entertain a motion.
I move approval of the final comprehensive development plan, wellhead protection, and subdivision plat for Martins Mill with the 8 conditions listed in the package,
In staff report.
in staff report. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, if not, if you'll support the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion is carried.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parker. Okay, the next item, and by the way, our mayor, Randy Taylor, is here with us this afternoon, so welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question related to the last submission, but it isn't going to affect the vote.
Okay.
Is this community impact statement that we received as part of this, is this the first one that we've actually reviewed? Not that we have required, but in this detail? I mean, I was impressed with the amount of information in it.
Well, I don't know, you might tell us. I think probably this is, we have received community impact statements in the past, I know.
This one was everything that we are planning on looking for, so it was a good example of, and we know that Brock does a lot of projects, so we know that the statements coming out of that office and coming to us should kind of reflect the same model going forward.
Good.
My question, thank you.
That's helpful. Good, thank you.
That's helpful.
All right, the next item on our agenda is receipt of the planning director's report, Wicomico County text amendments to sections 225-25, 225-67, and 225-99 kennels. Mr. Illuminati.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the department, Mr. Clark Meadows is present today to answer any additional questions that I cannot. This matter came before the Planning Commission on May 16, 2024. The commission was provided an overview of the current code regarding commercial kennels. There was discussion, and on July 18, 2024, a work session was held during the regularly scheduled meeting. Discussions regarding a new definition and revised regulations for kennels were proposed. And then on August 22nd, 2024, the commission conducted an advertised public hearing on the proposed text amendments. There was public feedback. There was also an additional period to allow for public comment. No additional comments were received during that period. The proposed text amendments address expanding kennels to the town transition zoning district, and then to amend the current code to address some of the current shortfalls. The proposed ordinance, which is attached as Exhibit A to the director's report, sets a specific limit of 10 or more dogs for the purposes of boarding, breeding, training, selling, exhibition, or raising. It removes other domesticated animals and specifically focuses on dogs. If the commission remembers, when an analysis was done of legislation surrounding districts, it was addressing dogs, not other domesticated animals. We have rules for that, especially livestock. So expanding to the town transition zoning district, removing the term commercial from the definition, and to not allow 2 acres if there are no outside runs, and remove the requirement of a soundproof building. Staff discussed how it's very difficult to determine what is a soundproof building. It would make it's not enforceable. Currently, that's one of the shortfalls. But to expand, to not have any runs or structure which houses the dogs located within 200 feet of existing residential dwelling on another parcel. Currently, it's to an adjacent parcel. We discussed that if there was sort of a panhandle that ran between a parcel which housed the kennel and then a panhandle from another parcel, and then a bunch of other parcels were on the other side of that panhandle, that those parcels on the other side of the panhandle would not be considered as part of the 200 feet. So by creating a 200-foot radius, it ensures that there's a greater protection for the sounding residential dwellings. That is a summation of the recommendation, of the discussion, and the proposed legislation for council's consideration. In light of that, are there any questions?
Either the commission members have any questions of Mr. Illuminati? I mean, this is something we've had some previous hearings on and discussions, and so I think this is a summary of what was agreed upon. So it's not the first time any of us have seen or are somewhat familiar with this particular presentation. So no other questions? Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then we'll entertain a motion to move to forward a favorable recommendation of the planning director's report to the Wicomico County Council for their review and action based on the 3 reasons stated in the report. Okay. Will someone make that motion for us? Okay.
I think you've done a great job. So
Okay.
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, if not, if you'll support the motion, then please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The chair votes aye. The motion is carried. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have one final item on our agenda this afternoon, and that is a work session for the City of Salisbury text amendment. Okay, if I can just have a quick moment before we begin. I need to, then you'll be here.
Okay,
Are you good?
sounds good.
Okay.
You asked me for.
Okay, I think on the final item for the work session, if I can just lay out a couple of ground rules for all of us so that we can all be on the same page in regard to this particular matter, because I know there are many people here today who are interested in this topic. It's an important topic, so we want to be sure that our Planning Commission has an opportunity to understand where we began in this process, where we are at the present time, and where we are going as we proceed further. So this is an opportunity to inform our Planning Commission about the process. Be sure that if there are questions that the Planning Commission has of the planning staff for the City of Salisbury, that we have an opportunity to do that. We will also hear from the applicant if there are any comments that, or questions particularly that we would like to pose to him. We will have that opportunity. But this is not a chance for public comment today. We expect that this will go forward for a public hearing, and there will be adequate time for the public to weigh in. Not only will there be adequate time, but the Planning Commission will want to hear from the public. That's an appropriate part of this process. But for today, we're going to hear from our planning staff. We're going to give the commission an opportunity to ask questions, and we will make a determination of how we move forward. We're not anticipating today that there is going to be any vote on the matter. This is an information center. This is an information piece, work session, primarily for the benefit of the Planning Commission. So with that, Mr. Fordick is here with us. I believe the applicant is here, and we'll ask him to come forward. And one other further comment as we kind of try and be clear about what our role is today, this afternoon, in this particular matter. And we will be focusing on the text amendment. Okay. There is, of course, another matter that I know all of the public and others are interested in related to a specific project, but I'm asking if we can, as best we can, to stay focused on what is in front of us today, which is the text amendment. And we'll try to be very specific about that and not get sidetracked and be talking about specifics related to the town center project. That will come at another day. But the application at the present time is for a text amendment that affects a particular project, but it also affects lots of properties in the CDB. So let's try and be focused on that and not go down the path of trying to get involved in specifics related to a specific project. Okay, having said that, to just kind of set the ground rules and what we're going to try to accomplish today, we'll turn first. Maybe it would be good for the record to have the applicants identify themselves so that we have that information as a part of the record. Mr. Gillis is here.
Brad Gillis, Salisbury Town Center Apartments, LLC.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Sullivan, counsel for Salisbury Town Center Apartments, LLC. Thank you all for having us today.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir. We'll hear from our city planning director first.
Thanks, everybody. So we're here to have this work session reviewing a text amendment application that was submitted back in July from Salisbury Town Center Apartments to increase the central business district inherent zoning density thanks. From 40 units per acre to 80 units per acre. That's the limit of what we're reviewing here. Changing the text in the code, chapter 17, currently reads, inherent density shall not exceed 40 units per acre. The change will be to make it read, inherent density shall not exceed 80 units per acre. So a change from 40 to 80. Staff has significant reservations about the Planning Commission recommending approval of this application and about the City Council approving this application for the following reasons. One, it's an end around. The zoning code already includes terms for increasing residential density by a substantial amount. Chapter 17 indicates that by special exception, one could achieve a massive density increase of up to 30 units per acre. The applicant chooses to bypass this established mechanism for increasing density. Something to note is that, of course, they had applied for a special exception last year, and that issue is currently in litigation that has not been resolved. The city has taken the stance that that mechanism is appropriate and the code is correct, and that 30-unit increase is allowed and should be. But again, that's currently working itself out through the courts. That mechanism, the special exception mechanism, through Board of Appeals, was thoughtfully enshrined in law by a previous city council and is not in there randomly. Encouragement of end-arounds like this may well lead to interested parties bypassing established codified mechanisms in pursuit of furthering their interests in projects in the city. This is not a good thing. It weakens and cheapens the city's code. The domino effect of this. Increasing allowable density by text amendment from 40 to 80 would then allow any property developer in the CBD via special exception, if the litigation is resolved in the direction that the city is supporting, to increase density from 80 units, which this amendment would result in, to 110 units per acre, again by special exception. Approval of the proposed doubling of density could easily lead to a near tripling of the current density without the Planning Commission's review, as special exceptions that could be sought by any other properties downtown would go only to the Board of Zoning Appeals. State and federal land use norms out the window. Staff performed extensive research trying to find comparable land use actions and found none in the state of Maryland or in the country. Parameters considered when making the statement were changing the density of a city's entire downtown, changing a neighborhood's density so dramatically as to double it, the change being driven by a developer rather than by the city and its staff itself, and a change originating from the desire to facilitate a single project, yet spilling wildly over to dozens of other properties. Staff found some land use actions that could exist within some of the parameters, but none that satisfied them all or even came close to doing so. Staff finds it highly inadvisable for Planning Commission to reinvent the wheel and support a land use action so extremely outside all existing norms. An action this radical could well draw national attention, case studies that wouldn't reflect well on the Planning Commission or the city, in the staff's opinion. Conforming structures, not really. The application indicates that a key benefit of this proposed text amendment is that it would bring many other properties in the CBD into conformance. It states in its conclusion that this amendment resolves all the existing inconsistencies and nonconformities of properties that have been developed and redeveloped for residential uses with a density above 40 units per acre. There's some truth in this, and it would bring some properties into conformance from a density perspective. It would, however, leave countless properties non-conforming in many ways. An example would be cursory glance tells you that CBD properties are significantly below the required 50-foot lot width. Other items like lot size, setbacks, the same principle applies. The application, which purports to bring existing properties into conformance in all ways, does not bother to propose text changes that would actually bring existing properties into conformance in all the different ways that they're not. Unintended consequences of allowing bigger buildings than currently allowed. As mentioned above, applying the density increase needed for this project to other properties in the CBD is said to be a benefit to those other properties. It doesn't address potential negative consequences of changing those buildings' allowed density. There have been examples of significant density increases being applied to large areas, leading to the destruction, whether via permitted demo or sadly accidental or unintentional destruction via arson or actively deferred maintenance of older building stock, often of contributing historical value. Changing the rules applying to existing buildings whereby they can be made significantly denser and more profitable inherently leads to a motive for their degradation and destruction. Parking, the thoroughness and currentness of the study. The application includes reference to a parking study. The study's from 2023, last year. The study doesn't make any reference to the proposed circa or about 1,000-seat University Performing Arts Center that's planned to be coming to downtown. It's sort of absurd to even provide a discussion of parking impacts of the text amendment when the parking study doesn't bother to make any reference to the coming greatest generator of parking demand. But briefly, the study states that future development will generate a peak 11 p.m. demand of 609 spaces. The center, being bigger than that, could well generate nearly that much demand itself at a similar evening hour, so the study isn't helpful at all. And it's fair to say there wasn't effectively serious thought given to the parking demands of currently known projected development. Coming comprehensive plan and zoning code update. Significant land use changes are already being addressed throughout the city by the city. The city's comprehensive plan update is long overdue and is currently being worked on by the city staff. The plan will likely lead to significant changes to zoning districts and the terms that govern them. Making a radical developer-driven change to the city's land use in the middle of that process doesn't make any sense and would be an extremely poor reflection on the city's approach to planning. It's haphazard and ad hoc when it should be thoughtful and deliberate. In light of the above assessment, staff thinks it is inadvisable to recommend approval for the requested text amendment. And one final thought, this report was prepared by the staff, by me particularly, but the mayor of Salisbury does want to come up and make a comment as well. If he can be welcome to make a comment.
I think at this particular time, we'll stay focused on your staff report.
Okay.
And we'll stay focused on, not that we don't want to hear from the mayor, but I think there'll be opportunity to hear from the mayor during the public session. But I think today, we're going to stay focused on the presentation and give the commission members an opportunity
Very good.
To ask questions and get the information we feel we need to make the decision that's proper for the city of Salisbury.
Very good. Not a problem.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gillis?
I'm going to yield the mic for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm not sure if this particular proceeding is the time for me to state the following, but in case it is, I'll put it on the record that with respect to the staff report, the applicant disagrees with the findings of the city and would respectfully request the Planning Commission, when it does, to reconsider the city's report. Having said that, before you is an amendment request to amend section 17.24040B 2B by increasing the ceiling for the inherent density permitted in CBD from 40 units per acre to 80 units per acre. Assuming a scenario in which the current Wicomico County Circuit Court's ruling is upheld on appeal at the expense of applicant and the expense of the city, there would be no viable method by which the applicant could request an increase with respect to the inherent density permitted in CBD, and it could be argued there would be no method to request an increase in density across any zoning district. As provided at the end of Salisbury Town Center's text amendment request submission, if ultimately adopted by the City Council many public meetings from now, the requested amendment to Section 17.24040 B2B would have the following results. It would allow the development of the project known as the Salisbury Town Center, referenced in the amended and restated land disposition agreement, to proceed. It would potentially end the litigation that's existing in its entirety. And I say potentially. And it would also resolve any question about any inconsistency or nonconformity with respect to density. If there are other existing nonconformities or inconsistencies with respect to the use of property in CBD, I would hope and expect in some reasonable time that the city, having undergone this thorough review, would address those inconsistencies later. And having said that, I just want to be clear, the reason why we're here today, the reason why this text amendment request is before you, is because if, again, the City Council were to ultimately adopt the text amendment to Section 17.24040, Salisbury Town Center would be able to fulfill its contractual obligations with the city, which is our express intent, and presumably is the express intent of both parties to that agreement. So thank you very much, and I'll cede it now to Mr. Gillis.
Are you really texting right now? You're not?
Mr. Gillis, let's stay focused, please, if you don't mind.
All right.
Exactly on what we're here for.
Sure.
Mr. Gillis has letters of support that have been obtained by a variety of community organizations and business establishments that will be presented. If you'd like, while he speaks, I can provide those to the clerk. Or
If you have information you would like the commission members to consider, you can provide them to Mr. Meadows, and he'll see that these things are distributed to the commission members.
I think to address in order that the text amendment, I'll start with the paragraph known as the end around. And before this, just again give context. The reason that we are here is that there is a judge's order specific to referencing the City of Salisbury's special exemption law is now unlawful. So that the meeting that we were at for planning and zoning, for Board of Zoning Appeals is considered unlawful. So I'd like to put in a record and pass to Mr. Meadows, these are 10 copies of the judge's orders. I believe that it's pertinent to reference in regards to the end around comment for the staff report. And the other item, which I'll yield to the chairman if he does not want me to enter this in, but at that meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Gorski, who was an attorney, entered into the record exhibit number 9, which I'll also have here too as well. He stated that he represented several people, including Holly Worthington, Randy Taylor, Backstreet Investments, and he stated that the city code is not in compliance with state law. In regards to end around, that is the direct reason that I am here right now. So that is also an exhibit, 10 copies as well. Moving on. We are a developer that is attempting to fulfill its contractual obligations with the City of Salisbury and my community. We have exhausted many hours and time, and to be honest, it's stressed me out. Development doesn't need to be this way, but it is, so we're here. Part of this process that we started on was in June of 2001. June of 2001, Mayor Barry Parsons Tillman and the city council members of the city of Salisbury completed a study. It was authored by Hyatt Palma. It's referenced in our zoning code. It's significant in its findings. I'll enter in also in the record excerpts of that document. And in 2001, on page 14 of the Hyatt Palma
Mr.
study.
Gillis, let's stay focused on the text amendment.
This is referencing.
If it's specific to the text amendment, please let us know how it's relevant to the text amendment.
I believe that it is. After this comment, tell me if I'm wrong. Rather than placing arbitrary or artificial limits on the number of housing units appropriate for downtown Salisbury, it is suggested that the absorption of units in the marketplace be used as an indicator of demand, and that every effort be made to develop the greatest number of market rate units possible in and near downtown when market conditions allow, which we as a developer believe that that is the case. So again, I'll enter the Hyatt Palma study as an exhibit as well. That is the reason that we're here. The amount of time that we've taken on this journey, the years that we have gone through, and the amount of meetings and hours and et cetera, I have absolutely had doubt that this was the wrong thing for me to do as a developer for my community. But my doubt has been proven wrong by several businesses downtown. And those businesses downtown have shown to the city council that we are and they are tired. Break the cycle and move forward with development downtown. And what they are attempting to do in layman's terms is bring beds and heads in downtown Salisbury. On Monday, September 16th, 2024, the Downtown Salisbury Business Alliance presented to the City Council several initiatives. One of those initiatives was them supporting the text amendment. And I'll also enter that. Sorry? Okay, thank you. And I'll also enter those minutes and findings into the record as well, showing that the Downtown Business Alliance is also in favor. Thank you. When I also continued to have doubt, I then reached out to my peer group, and then I reached out to all the folks that I hold true and near to my heart. Many of those people, I had to talk through the specific details of our request and spent countless hours on the phone having discussion. And sometimes those discussions confused me as to what I was actually asking for. At core, I went to over 24 businesses downtown. Those downtown businesses consist of retail shops such as the Skate Shop, Soul Yoga, and core institutional businesses such as Title Health and Purdue Farms. So I would argue that it's from soup to nuts in regards to the support that we have received. In addition to the institutions that support, and also in addition to the businesses that support, we have gone to Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce and also Greater Salisbury Committee. And in this next exhibit, which I will put on the record, over I believe it's 26 letters of support in favor of this text amendment. Again, from Skate Shop to Purdue. It's a wide swath. This reinforced that we are moving in the right direction to me. This codified to me the direction that we are moving, and that this text amendment is the right decision for this Planning and Zoning Commission to make. So I'll enter those into exhibit.
Yes.
Okay.
I imagine at this point, the Planning Commission might have questions as it relates to the text amendment, albeit it is quite simple in its most literal form. It's changing the number 4 to 8, albeit with a 0 behind it. But otherwise, you see all the paper I have. If you guys have any questions for us as it relates to the text amendment, the thoughtful consideration behind it, thoughtful consideration that went into it, please, by all means, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, now we'll turn it over to the commission and see if there are questions to Mr. Wojtek or to Mr. Gillis or Mr. Sullivan. I think this is the time for us to gather information. If there is information we don't have, we can request that so that the city planning staff can provide that information to us at the next meeting. But at this time, I think we should open it up for questions or concerns from the commission members. So if anyone would like to be heard, who's first?
Okay. Just
Okay,
one
Mr.
simple
Thomas?
Item. Excuse me, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
Under item 7, it talks about the significant land use changes already being addressed throughout the city by the city. City's comprehensive plan update is long overdue and is currently being worked on by city staff. Can you give me a status of where that is and when it may be complete?
Yeah, so we had a consultant working on the comp plan update for quite a while, for the better part of this year, I would say. We got a draft of it about a month ago. We feel like there's room for a lot of improvement on it. It's a little derivative from the last one to kind of an extreme extent. We don't feel that it really takes a thoughtful approach to all the stakeholder input we've gotten, things like that. So we've decided to take that onto ourselves to kind of rejigger it to make it a great guiding document for the city. Started that process the past few weeks. At the most conservative, we think it'll be complete and hopefully through the council within 6 months, hoping for a shorter time frame than that, though. You're welcome.
Just want to provide some clarity that, and again, I just became, as the city council president, became known of that 2 days ago at the city council housing action committee, and Councilwoman Adishio can attest to that, as well as the mayor. And again, we've had no other discussion since the last, I believe, stakeholder meeting for the public last January, or I'm sorry, yes, I believe it was January 23 before the elections. And but we're getting conflicting information. So I think there's some misinformation because the city administrator says that that is not a true statement, that we have not dropped the consultant and that you all are not taking on that tax. And also the city has expensed, a great amount of dollars for that consultant. So again, I don't want to make any misstatements on the record. So I think, that's being discussed, but city council has appropriated funds for a comprehensive plan review by Mead and Hunt as the consultant, and they are still hired as the consultant for that project.
Other questions?
And sorry, not to derail the important topic about the density change with what we've just learned just now, but at its core, the update to the plan, to the comprehensive plan, is a planning commission responsibility. It's codified that way, not just in local code, but in Maryland, in the Maryland Charter. It's our responsibility as a planning commission to make sure that the comprehensive plan is updated every 10 years. We choose to delegate it to professional staff, and professional staff supports the planning commission. Consultants support the planning commission in that end. But our role is at the end to make sure that the plan, which lasts for at least the next 10 years, represents what the community wants, and that we have a part in that process. I think it's misguided in terms of the governance within your department to make a decision like that without having some counsel with the planning commission, because it's our responsibility to make sure that that happens. So again, I don't mean to take energy away from what we're really here. I'm extremely shocked that this is how this is communicated to the planning commission when this is one of our core responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Drew. And I also want to just emphasize that, again, the city's taxpayer dollars have been spent already on this consultant. So I want to see it through that we at least get our money's worth and that the city taxpayers are getting their money's worth on this project. But moreover, I want to move towards this. And Mr. Wojtek, you mentioned that you were the author of this staff report, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that you mentioned, again, at another meeting that, the reason why you wanted to kind of expound upon or move away from the consultant is that, you weren't confident in their ability to draft a reasonable and thought-provoking and a comprehensive plan that matched to Salisbury's expertise, correct? Okay, and so, yeah, and so I think just, again, seeing my short time on the planning commission, since last October, or last November, rather, until now, I do want to say that this staff report wouldn't be one that I would confidently use as a basis for making a decision. And so just given that and the information beforehand, I don't think we should move forward with the DID team taking on such a grave task that is impacting to our community of taking on the planning, the comprehensive plan review, just with given, the status here of this staff report here. I mean, can you sort of, see how I would come to that consensus on my own?
What's the question? Sorry.
So, there's no, I'm looking at this staff report. I think some of my fellow commission members can agree that, there's not much, fact here. This seems like an opinion piece rather than a staff report. I'm just not.
I would respond to that by saying there's not much fact in the text amendment. It's literally, as Mr. Sullivan said, changing one digit, and this is, what some thoughts are about that.
So I guess if you could walk us through because and you said here that the planning staff has done extensive research, but I'm not seeing, I see one citation to the code, but I'm fine. I want you as the expert, and again, as me, as who solidified your position, as the director of DID. When you came to council, I said, that as a direction from our city administrator, we as council said yes, and so we rely on you as the experts. But I'm not seeing I guess, can you walk us through where your research led you to this staff report?
I would say the thought behind this was the purpose of this work session was to generate those additional questions from the Planning Commission. So that's part of why I'm here.
Can I ask a question? As a part of your research, did you look at the city of Frederick, Maryland?
We did, and we noted that they had significantly lower downtown density, and the 20s is the numbers that we saw.
Not correct. I was hoping for that kind of information in the staff report, and I'm happy to share this with everyone. In the Frederick Downtown Business District, the allowed density for multifamily units is 75 units per acre.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Furthermore, I take issue with the comment in regards to this norms being out of the window. So in doing that research, I found that they have the Carroll Creek Overlay District, which is an overlay district over the downtown walkable area in Carroll Creek, if anyone's familiar with that. They just passed in 2023 an amendment to allow for density that could double the existing density in any of those districts, a big part of which is that downtown business district. By right, there are certain rules. You have to provide structured parking. You have to provide one additional parking space per unit. I spoke with the attorneys involved, and it was brought forth by two developers, so for a specific project. And to me, that sounds very similar to what's being asked here. So when I asked those attorneys, when I read them the staff report, and they said that they vehemently disagreed that the text amendment is the appropriate way to bring this forth, and that there are precedents for this kind of action.
Definitely information like that. Obviously, we're not able to research every single town and city, but the ones that we have, we found instances of tripling density downtown, but driven by a city. We've found instances of density bonuses and different schemes like that. But any information like that is absolutely helpful.
I have the ordinance here, but I would point out it was driven by two developers. It was because they have, what's happened in downtown Frederick is they've had some trouble getting development to move forward in the Carroll Creek overlay, and so they thought this would be a way to incentivize that. Since they brought this on in 2023, they had two projects that have moved forward. And I mean, it would allow a density of up to 150 units an acre in that area.
That's for the entire downtown of the city of Frederick.
That's for mixed-use development in parts of the downtown business district that overlap with the Carroll Creek overlay district, which is substantial if you look at a map. So,
I guess in a similar vein, did you happen to look at Cambridge, Maryland? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, a review of their zoning codes, I didn't go to the extent that my colleague did. They actually, in the waterfront downtown development district downtown, they don't have a density restriction. They have a building height restriction, and that's allowed for some very pleasing structures to be built over the last 25 years in that downtown area. So I think I think the bigger point is we shouldn't get hung up in the weeds maybe in any one particular thing, but one thing that I see as a gap in this style of report that you've had is that going back to my second grade math teacher, you didn't show your work. It would be useful to understand what the basis of you reaching these conclusions are, because it's not clear at all from the staff report.
Just one more addition to Cambridge, actually, in their downtown historic district, I believe they call it, the Ray Street corridor, there is no parking minimum for development as well, just to add that piece there.
Yeah, just to reiterate, that was part of the purpose of a work session, that we're hoping to generate questions and comments like this that we could go back and help provide elaboration. It's my understanding of a work session.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I didn't see anything in here. I know a good part of Salisbury, downtown Salisbury, is in the federal flood zone. Did you do any studies about any of that?
We got a lot of public input regarding the flood zone, but we didn't really apply that to the study yet, no.
I've been here a long time, not as long as some of the folks up here, but I don't think I've ever seen a report. I compliment you on the thought you put into this report. Some of my colleagues up here might not agree, but I thought it was well thought out, to get remarks from the commission. We talk about the parking issue, and it was mentioned about businesses supporting this. I just wonder if those businesses, it was explained to them just exactly what size buildings they would be allowing and what the parking situation would be, because there was a news report on one of the local TV stations here a couple of weeks ago, and one of the main concerns with the businesses downtown is there wasn't enough parking. That was the problem for them getting people to shop downtown and do business downtown. It's because of the parking situation. And I see you mentioned the situation with the library, the 1,000-seat arena that they're going to build. That's not going to be used at nights. I noticed you mentions in here about the 11 p.m. thing or whatever, but that's going to be things that's going to be used on the weekends during the week and all different times. So all this is going to create a situation with parking. We had a development on the agenda here earlier today when the developer actually went over and above the amount of parking spaces that they were required to have, which I thought was well thought out. The Eastern Shore is a little different than some cities, places in the country. We're still a car culture here. I hear this thing about, I think somebody was up here at one time and said that they only had, each apartment was only allowed a half a space or a space and a half or something like that. most families in our area that I know have 2 cars. So that creates an issue. You know, you can't go anywhere in downtown Salisbury right now and buy a loaf of bread. You have to walk across the highway if Royal Farms does sell us bread. I think they do. But, you know, so people are going to have to be mobile to be able to go shopping. There's not a drugstore downtown. So people are going to have cars or a bicycle, I suppose. But, you know, the main thing about this is the congestion that this is going to cause if you increase this density. It's going to create, you know, so much more congestion, parking issues. Businesses are not going to be able to, people are not going to come downtown to shop. We have problems finding parking spaces as it is now. If you have a big court case, unless you park in the parking garage, the library is getting ready to move. One of the issues about the library moving is parking. When that park little thing was put up there next to the library, ladies with their kids don't want to park in that parking garage and walk across that street. I've had too many people tell me that. So, anyway.
So, to my colleague's question, it's a great question. It leads on to the bigger question, which is, who is the entity that's responsible for managing parking in downtown?
City has been. The city.
How's that going?
How's it going? It's a broad question.
Because it's not the responsibility of the planning commission within this district to build into any plan approvals that we make to make sure that there's parking. That's very clear. It's not the responsibility of a developer to provide that parking. So I agree with you. It is the city's responsibility. And so to the extent that that has become an issue, whether we're talking about this proposed increase in density or whether we're talking about keeping the status quo, I find it, you know, almost mismanagement or negligence that this hasn't been addressed by the city.
Just about everything we talk about up here is
Why do you
about
laugh?
parking.
Because of what you said.
No,
He just said it's the city's responsibility.
We know which side you're on. Mr. Chairman.
Let's stay focused if we can.
I promise you, I'll stay focused.
I think we need to be careful about everyone having an opportunity to be heard. If one person is heard, everyone has the same opportunity. Well, I'm careful. I want to be sure that the mayor has an opportunity, but not to the exclusion of other people. So I do think we will have an opportunity at the public hearing to hear comments from any member of the public. That goes from the mayor on down to anyone else. But if we start saying one person can speak and others can't, I think there's a degree of unfairness there. And trying to stay focused and careful that everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard. But particularly today, this is where the Planning Commission needs to get information on which to make a proper decision on the application before us.
I quickly respond just to Mr. Holloway's initial comment, what he said at the beginning that about the report, and again, to stress that is the point, to make it sort of thought-provoking and to generate comments and questions from you all. Definitely the feedback about different types of land use actions that have been brought up. I'm definitely interested to hear about that and how, you know, these instances do reflect not just developer-driven changes, but single project developer-driven changes that affect an entire downtown. That's something I definitely couldn't find, something I mentioned as a parameter. That'd be helpful if you guys can share.
Mr. Chairman.
Other comments or questions?
I mean, I think we all agree that the parking issue is a real one. Was there any discussion between the city and the developer to use this text amendment as an opportunity to fix that? So I'll just say, in Frederick, they have in this area where they wrote this new ordinance, their parking requirements are 3/4 of a parking space per unit, and there was concerns that that wasn't sufficient. So with this ordinance, for every unit that was provided above the baseline of 75 there, they had to provide a single space per unit, so it was a higher number. Now, I know we don't have any parking requirements downtown, but it seems to me that this would have been an opportunity to fix two problems, right? That we could have written a text amendment that says that if you increase the density beyond 40, you have to provide some parking spaces. Did anybody, was there?
Ms. Maria, I can answer that question. Since we submitted our text amendment request on July 12th, outside of my attendance with Mr. Gillis at last month's Planning Commission meeting, we did not hear from the city on this text amendment. And speaking for myself, I learned of the staff report by checking the county's website last week.
Say to address that, you know, we just wanted to give the utmost respect to their amendment as written and didn't want to try to manipulate it.
I think it's staff's responsibility to come to the table and try to find some compromise and,
So I think you're seeing. So I think you're seeing this is, again, since I've taken office, and again I share the exhaustion, and if I say the words lot 1, 11, and 15 one more time, I think that I dream about those things and parking and those things, but they're real life things. But I think what you all are now seeing that, this could have and should be sorted out with city staff, administration, and the developer. Conversations that should have happened and should have been happening and should be happening. Now we'll speak to the parking again at my request. I brought staff from SU, senior staff, to a table to address, okay, what do you think parking concerns or your requirements will be? So we have a number, because again, everyone's like 1,000 seat, which again we've learned they're not going with a 1,000 seat arena anymore. It's going to be less than that. So through that, again, I said, what is the number? So a senior staff person said between 200 to 300 spaces, something that they would deem as realistic for their usual turn of events, because not every production is going to be at max capacity. They're going to have several events, not every day. That is what a good number. If you were to build a parking mechanism for this lot, for this space, for your venue, what would it be? They said between 200 to 300 spaces. And so again, how we come about doing this, and it's not a if we do this, it's how do we do this? It's through conversations, and you all are, my fellow planning commission members are seeing, because of the lack of conversation, because of the lack of wanting to meet in the middle, we're at this point, and it is obvious chaos at this point, and I'm disappointed as being a representative of the city, as this being presented to us, and the lack of communication that has happened.
Let's see if we can get refocused back on the application that's before us.
Could I speak to that very quickly?
I'd like to get back on the focus of what we're here for today, which is consideration of an application to increase density. It's a very simple presentation. It's increasing density from 40 to 80 units per acre. Now let's talk about the consequences and some information, Mr. Wojtek, that we need in order to make an informed decision about whether we increase density or we don't. And I'd like to ask if you could provide this information to us for our consideration at the next meeting. And it's a number of issues here, but I think they're relevant, important, and I think we need this information to make an informed decision. So let's go through these things. The rest of the commissioners may want to comment or have additional things they'd like to know so they can make a good decision. But I have a number of things that I'd like to go through that I think are relevant, that are not in the staff report, but are important for us to know if we're going to make an informed decision. First of all, let's talk about the surrounding area. The application here is talking about the entire CBD district. There's surrounding areas that this application does not cover. What is the surrounding area neighborhood? What is it like? Will the higher volume, the higher density disrupt or enhance businesses and the current residential experience in those outlying areas? That information could be helpful. What effect will the increase in density have on commercial enterprises? What will be the effect of that? What can you tell us about how commercial enterprises might be affected. History, can you give us a little bit of history about what the density was, how it's changed? There are a number, as you know, there are a number of buildings with densities higher than 40 right now. Can you provide a history for how that happened? How many buildings do we have that have a 40 or lower density? That would be information that could be helpful to us. What is the impact to the surrounding neighborhood is critically important, I think, for us to know. And what is the ability of the CBD to accommodate the density that's proposed? You know, can the CBD accommodate 80 units per acre? I mean, that's information we need to know if we're going to make a decision to double the density. How is it going to impact? Who's going to be affected the most? This is about the CBD, but there are other properties in the outlying areas. How are they affected? Are there sufficient city services that are available to the CBD? In other words, water, sewer, parking has been discussed already. Do we have sufficient services that are available to the CBD with an increase in density that's doubling the density? How about the capability of emergency services? How are they affected? That's important for us to know.
Schools.
Schools, absolutely. Is the increased density consistent with the Metro Core Plan? Is it? I'm not sure. But why wouldn't we want to know that if we're going to double the density? Is the increased density consistent with any other objectives of the zoning code? Will the increased density pose any endangerment to the health, security, general welfare of the public? Is there anything that you can bring to us that say, if we double the density requirement, does this endanger public health in any way, shape, or form? I don't know. But you, as the professional planner, should be able to get some information to help us understand if it would or wouldn't. Will the increase in density adversely affect transportation? Or will it unduly burden water, sewer, schools, parks, stormwater management, or any other facilities, public facilities? Isn't that important for us to know? Shouldn't our staff report have this kind of information in it if we're going to double the density for this one particular district? I think it's important for us to know those questions.
Absolutely agree. I think they also would have been good to have been included in the justification for the amendment, but I agree with both points. Absolutely.
Will the density create an undue concentration of population? Is that, I mean, common sense says it probably will. Will it substantially increase the congestion of the streets or create any hazardous traffic conditions? We should know that. We should have that information. Will the increased density preserve or protect environmental or historical assets of particular interest in the community? Will it? Shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't we know the impact? That's information that I think the commission has to have if we're going to make an informed and decision in the best interest of the city residents and the community.
Can I ask a question for clarification?
Sure.
A lot of these things will ultimately be speculative because, again, the application is tied to a single project. Are you most interested in assuming maximum build-out for every?
I'm interested in whatever you, as a professional planner, can provide to this commission in relation to these particular questions. I think whatever perspective you can provide to us, and frankly, perhaps even the developer will want to weigh in on this at the time of a public hearing. These are appropriate and proper questions for the staff report to have that information in it. Because otherwise, we're just making a decision based on what maybe we might know, but we are lay people. We don't have the benefit of professional planning. And as you, as the professional planners, and frankly, the developers, might have insights on all of these topics, and I think it would be very helpful if you could provide that information. You know, we're supposed to make findings of facts up here, based our decision on findings of fact. What kind of findings of fact do we have in front of us to consider in order to make a proper and informed decision? Right now, not a lot.
Again, I'd go back to the fact that this is a work session and the finding of fact. Will be at the
Absolutely.
next.
That's why we're here.
Yes, sir.
It's absolutely why we're here. It's to get the information we need, and we have a window of opportunity to do it. We've got 30 days, and this is appropriate information for us to consider. And your help in getting that to us would be very much appreciated. That's what we turn to you for. That's your expertise to help us. We make the decisions, but we can't do it without your professional input and help, and also help from the developer. I'm not saying exclusively from you. We have a public here today. They have thoughts about this, and it's important for us to hear those as well, and we will. But these are basic issues and findings of fact that we need, and it would be helpful for us if you can gather that information and provide it to us. It would help us make a proper and informed decision. And as to Mr. Dowdy's comment, you know, I agree with that. I agree that we're a planning commission. Now, we're up here trying to make a decision on density. We have a developer who is interested in putting forth a project that he feels is beneficial to this community. We have a public who has lots of questions about that. The time for these kinds of discussions to occur is when you all talk together about them, so that when it comes here, much of these issues have been discussed and resolutions reached, so that the Planning Commission can be supportive, but not feel like we're the ones who have to make the decision without adequate information on which to be informed and be the basis for the decision.
I would say in response to that in the previous comment, as you guys might know, with all other text amendments, the applicant and Mr. Parker as their agent on a lot of them, they come to the city staff prior to submitting and filing the text amendment. So we felt that there wasn't necessarily an interest.
I don't know what occurred. You have only been here a short time, and I respect the fact that, look, I'm brand new to this community, you know, and you are. In fairness to you, you don't know this community like Mr. Gillis does. But what I do know is it's important for the two to come together and talk about these issues in detail, frankly, in great detail. And if it wasn't you, it was the person before you. But you have a staff as well who have plenty on their plate. But this project is important. And it's important to the public. You know, they want to hear, but they want good decisions made based on good findings. And that's what I want to see for this commission, and I think every commissioner up here wants the same thing. So I encourage Mr. Gillis. I don't know how many times he may have contacted you. It's not important to me at this point. We're now at a point where a decision's going to be made. But unfortunately, a lot of time has been lost in terms of putting the two of you together and working through difficult, tough, political, all kinds of issues. But coming to the commission, and I'm including you, Mr. Gillis, right along, it's not a one-sided arrangement. But we've had those conversations at the time of the preliminary. You know, we talked about parking. And Mr. Gillis said, I'll get some answers for you on parking. And at some point in time, not today, but at some point in time when this development comes back, he's going to be looking and saying, I got my answers for you. But that's what the process has to be. And I don't know what's happened in this instance, but what I do know that should have happened is the two of you have been working together for weeks, months, couldn't happen in your case. But somebody within the planning staff and somebody that's on the developer staff gets together and works through every single one of these issues so that when you come here, we got a good result. That's what we need. So if you can help us with that information, those findings will be particularly important. And if Mr. Gillis wants to weigh in into any of those requests, I hope he will.
Mr. Chairman, to the extent that we have information addressing I believe it was 12 items that you referenced. The information that we have available is attached as Exhibit A to the text amendment request, which is the staff report that was prepared by the City of Salisbury for the July 2023 Planning Commission hearing. And as it relates to discussions, we are open and we take your advice. And I would note that as it relates to this project and any downtown development project, while the city's director is new to the job, this particular developer has been having conversations with the city in terms of its municipal corporation for multiple years, and we hope to get to resume those discussions.
Well, we're going to welcome more information because I think what we have at this point is not a basis for a good, sound, informed decision.
Understood.
We need more.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Other comments or questions from anyone?
Comment. I have a
Yes, sir.
comment.
Okay.
You know, we keep referencing Frederick or Cambridge. You know, just because of what they've done doesn't mean it's right. And it's something that might come back later and bite them. And I want to know who drives 3/4 of a car. Anybody in this room?
I have before.
You have 3/4 of a car?
Yeah, they've been really bad.
Okay.
I would like to add, just in the interest of, I was looking for factual information in this report as well, and finding it lacking, I did my own research as well. And another item that I looked at was the downtown master plan document that was prepared and was approved by the city and received a lot of community feedback. And it was a different project that was planned at the time for Lot 1, but that project that was planned at the time was part of that master plan. And that project encompassed all of Lot 1 and also used a parking garage that was in the lot behind the library. And there they had proposed 200 apartments and 40,000 square feet of retail. And I think that's a good indication of what the previous documents by the city and what their vision was for the density on this property.
All right. Are there any other comments or concerns from anyone?
Oh, I want to make a clarifying statement about, I'm not sure if I said it, but if I didn't, about the special exception. I know Mr. Wojtek mentioned that the city has taken a stance as far as the special exception, and I'm not sure if our special counsel wants to clarify that statement, because I think that was...
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of give the current stance as it is, as briefly as possible, I'm sure. So to kind of recap where that special exemption provision of the city zoning code as it pertains to the CBD, What happened was the Salisbury Town Center project had, as directed under the code, gone to the Board of Appeals to obtain a special exemption to increase the density up to 77 units per acre. During that hearing for the Board of Appeals, the public commentary raised included an argument that a special exemption cannot be used to increase density because it's inconsistent with the enabling legislation and other statutes. The developer, of course, disagreed with that contention. The Board of Appeals made a decision to deny the special exemption. However, expressly in that motion, they said that they were not making that ruling based on this argument about the special exemption being an inappropriate avenue to increase density. That denial by the Board of Appeals was then appealed by a developer to the Circuit Court of Wicomico County, and a cross appeal was filed by certain interested parties that were present at the Board of Appeals. As a preliminary motion, so a motion that's decided without having the benefit of a full record, just what is presented and the one page of a decision denying that special exemption. Through a preliminary motion, the other interested parties, not developer, the other ones, of which there are several, so forgive me, I'm not trying to minimize who's involved there, raised the issue of the special exemption being an improper avenue to increase density again. Developer opposed, and there were cross motions in both. There were two separate actions. Those were consolidated. There was a hearing held in March where the developer presented an argument. The counsel, Anthony Gorski, for the several interested parties also presented an argument. I was instructed by mayor to not to not take a position at that hearing. The court, after that hearing, issued an order declaring that the city's zoning code provision that permitted an increase of density by way of special exemption was invalid. Subsequently, the city, council and mayor, decided that we should file a motion for reconsideration of that circuit court's opinion, saying that the zoning code allowing increase of density by special exemption is invalid. We filed the necessary briefs. We had another hearing on that motion for reconsideration, and that motion for reconsideration was ultimately denied. So where that would, at that juncture, just to kind of where we would be the way that stands, at least as it pertains to the CBD, we would not, that the ruling is we cannot increase density by way of special exemption. Now, I will say that ruling is now currently under appeal with the court of, an appeal was filed both by developer and city on that last ruling. And until and unless there's an overturning of that ruling stands. So as of now, as of today, we wouldn't, I would believe that we would not able to increase density by way of special exemption in the CBD. Now, again, that's pending. There's going to be, a briefing schedule hasn't been set, but that will get set, and ultimately we'll have to see whether or not that's going to be permissible, what Annapolis thinks exactly.
Okay, and I'd like to thank Ms. Patel. She's serving as special counsel due to a conflict with Ms. Ryan. So we appreciate all of the input that she has had as far as this particular issue thus far. And so it's a perfect segue as to where we go from today. What's next? And I think the next step is a public hearing.
That's correct.
And so public hearing would occur at our next meeting.
That's correct.
We have a certain timeline here that if we don't soon act, there are limitations on how long that can go, and we're not quite to the deadline, but we need to move this forward. So I think our expectation is that this matter will be scheduled for a public hearing at our next regular meeting. which would be in November. Do you know the date? I don't know. Someone maybe knows the date.
21st.
21st of November. Thanksgiving time.
Week before Thanksgiving.
Lots to be thankful for. Lots of good things to be thankful for. I'm sorry, did you have a question? Were you raising a question, Mr. Sullivan? Maybe not.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about Thanksgiving, I'm sorry.
Okay. Good thing to think about. All right, so I think we will move forward then with the public hearing at our next meeting. And thank the public for being here today and for your anticipated input at the public hearing. We have an opportunity to get more information to be considered when we make our decision, and the public's input will be a part of that. So we thank you for your attendance here today. All right. Okay. Anything further in regard to this work session?
Just a
Yes, sir.
housekeeping question.
Okay.
If I may. With the input that you received today, it sounds like we can expect to see a revised staff report.
Absolutely. That was
What's the schedule for that?
I mean, I suppose it'd be along the normal course. What does it get submitted to prior?
I guess it would be useful to me as a commissioner that we have it prior to this public hearing.
I think it would be a part of the packet.
Did you want
Okay.
it sooner than that, or?
It'd be part of the, so we would get it a week ahead of time.
Yeah, did you want it?
Normal course, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the information would come to us as it usually
Okay.
does,
Same way
because
it did,
there certainly is likely to be other matters for our consideration as well. And
Makes
sense. Yeah.
so those additional comments would be included as a part of the package.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as a matter of administrative record, Mr. Meadows has copies of each and every one of the exhibits that was introduced by Mr. Gillis for each and every one of the commissioners to take themselves after the meeting if they're interested in reviewing those exhibits.
That's fine, okay. We will leave that to Mr. Meadows to distribute those things to the commission members so that they have it and can be a part of their consideration and deliberations as we move forward. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Okay. This portion of our meeting then is concluded, and thank you for your participation today. And so we have a couple of wrap-up things for the commission, and then we'll move to adjourn. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you got
So it's going about 7:50.
Oh, only just a
more letters.
Just wrap up.
I think you.
Nothing else. of any si- yeah, no.
Just copies.
And if you have-
Thank you
if
for
I
that.
understand.
How did you do that all
It
off
would
the
just
top of
be a
your head?
I've said it many
My
times.
my brain would explode. My brain did explode just listening to it.
I've said it many times. It's complicated. If you're not in the business.
You thought that was a good one.
Understand.
It's going to be.
It's like a tennis match.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I don't get tennis matches either.
It's nothing compared to
Okay. I think we're ready maybe to wrap up our meeting, and
I tell them I'm in it for the
I guess I've lost total control.
That's what we were just talking about.
I know.
Is it adjourned? So moved. No.
Okay, so before I lose absolute,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I think I've got a couple of things, just one a question and one a reminder. Janae's asked me to remind the commissioners of an email she sent out on October 1st regarding a training course for board and commission members. She has that information available. It's free of charge. If members need to be initially trained or a renewal of that, she has the information that someone can attend that meeting virtually or in person if they feel the need. Secondly, these exhibits that were submitted by the developer, would you prefer that to be included with the commission's materials for the November 21st meeting in the
We
interest of
certainly need it
organization,
for the November meeting.
rather than distributing it this
I mean,
afternoon.
if you want to distribute, I mean, I don't know how the commission members feel, but I suspect they're comfortable as long as they get it.
As a part of
as a part
the package for the 21st.
I'd like the copy sooner if you have them now.
Okay, well, maybe if Mr.
You feel the
Marino
same way?
Holt would like his, you can give him his before he goes, maybe if he'd like to have it now. But you know, if that's not possible, then we'll all get it at the same time.
Why don't we hold on to them? He can make arrangements with Janae to pick up, let's, just keeping things organized and,
That's a
and he
good
can
plan.
get those sooner if he chooses, and, but we'll include those with the packages for the 21st.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments, Mr. Meadows, that you have?
No, sir, I don't have anything.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Wojtek, that you want to bring to our attention in terms of things that are happening within the city that maybe we need to be aware of, or not necessarily? We've got plenty on our plate, and I know you all are very busy, and we appreciate what you do.
Next month, you also have the public hearing portion for the text amendment for the hamlets as well, which was that one we corrected, not last meeting, but the meeting before, where there was the issue with the villages of Adelet, and they had the two parcels, and they redistributed some of the density, so they were just changed based on like how the parcels got mixed up over time. So it's just that correction in the code to make everything compliant with, you guys saw that initial work session, not last meeting, but the meeting before. So that'll be back to public hearing next month as well. So those are two.
Do public hearings next time? Okay.
And an ordinance permit, which is also a public hearing.
Yeah.
As well, for Chesapeake Utilities, it's something minor. It's basically a request to make their utilities safer, essentially. So
The only caution I would say, and this is for our planning purposes, this hearing on the application is likely to be lengthy because there will be folks who want to be heard and should be heard. So I think if we can be careful and cautious about the number of items on the agenda, because if there is something that's critical, of course, we'll have to include it. But be aware, you already are, this will be a more lengthy meeting because I think many folks would like to weigh in. We're going to try to do what we can to manage the comment period, but still, it's an important issue. We need to give it the proper attention it deserves. And so just be sensitive to that as you begin planning for next month's agenda, I think.
I don't know about you, but I imagine those other two will be.
Quick ones, yeah, I'm sure they will, yeah. And we have the business, we have to pay attention to the business of the city and the county, so we'll do that. But it's just a heads up that this is likely to take some time. All right,
I'd make a point of clarity about the consultant for the planning, we did issue a suspension last week. I don't know if it's been undone or retracted possibly by administration, but the procurement director did issue a formal notice last week, so I'm going to check on that to see what the current status is. Again, it might be undone, I don't know.
I think it would be helpful for us to know where we are in that process. As Mr. Drew has pointed out, it is a part of our responsibility. And as far as I knew, it was moving along without any interruption, but it sounds like that may not be the case.
Comments that came from the consultant at the end of these meetings about how they aren't listening and aren't going to incorporate the feedback. It was really off-putting, and agreed that I don't know the procedures that well and how we communicate with you guys and get your input, but it was really offensive and horribly managed.
I'd like to be part of that process. So I'd like to understand what the work product is and understand what your concerns are as well. But, keep, communicating.
Yeah, and make makes perfect sense, so apologies for lack of communication.
We appreciate being in the loop, so whatever you can do, thank you for that. Thank you. All right, anything further? If not, yes, sir.
In regards to training, I learned recently that one of us is supposed to be have training in the Open Meetings Act. Do we have somebody who's?
Yeah,
You're good? Okay.
I have to be.
You have to be.
I think Joe too.
Oh, okay.
Open Meetings Act? You're Open Meetings Act trained too, right?
No.
That wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm doing it anyway. So ethically operating.
Maybe a couple years ago.
Years ago.
I'm going to learn a lot.
If I am,
Be careful about
every time I do one, I probably should have, I learned what to do, so I think they're really good.
Okay, if there's nothing further, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.